Welcome to Series 7 of the Agility for All YouTube channel. In this series, you will get to hear from the entire team as we talk about the components of our new program designed to engage the right stakeholders at the right time to create programs and products that avoid delays, decrease risk, and deliver value. In this six-part series, we will talk about everything from open spaces to curate ideas, liftoff to successfully start Agile teams, and training to support your Agile goals. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy this series. All right, everyone, I am super excited that this is season 7 on our YouTube channel. 7, can you believe it? And I didn't even want to do the first video. That's an important note. And I am excited to welcome a new member to the cast, so to speak. So today, Dee Gray has joined us for Series 7 and is going to be doing some of the interviews, which brings me to the next point. That is going to be our format this series. It's not just going to be people talking or showing exhibits. We are going to do this interview style, and we're going to be talking about a new program that we are launching and all the different components of it that could help people with their businesses. So Dee, thank you for being the guinea pig for the first series, first episode in this series. I am super excited to have you join the team.
Thank you. I am also super excited. And I'm really excited to be involved in an interview process. That's what I love doing. It's what I do for my job. So I really appreciate this opportunity. But let's dig in. So my first question, you and I, we've talked a lot about it, but I still kind of need a good understanding, kind of a base understanding. We're focused on open space technology. What is it though? What really is open space technology?
It's really interesting because if you do a quick Google search, you're going to get 10 different answers in the first 10 results. And a lot of people start with, this is a new way to organize a meeting or a conference. And I hate that as the first definition because it implies we're just putting something in our calendar and going to another meeting with a different format. And that is probably about as far from the reality as you can get. What it is, and people call it an unconference because there's no published agenda, if you will. Then people get a bit nervous because it's a hippie thing with no real plan and what are we going to get out of it? So all of those kind of buzzwords that we throw around that you see in those first 10 Google search results kind of set you up for maybe unrealistic expectations. But what it is a way to solve complex problems by bringing the right people into the conversation at the right time so that you focus on what is important. So for example, so many times, especially in organizations, they have meetings and maybe the upper levels of people are in those meetings and they're coming up with the agenda and they're making the decisions, and maybe they'll invite people from different departments and maybe they won't, and then a decision will be made. But with an open space, you start out by saying, we are going to open this up to the community that is impacted by our decisions. So that could be customers, that could be internal employees or staff, that could be stakeholders, that could be different community and civic organizations. There's really no box to put around it. And maybe that's why I like open space, because we get rid of the box, because you know I hate boxes. But the first thing is you have to have a compelling theme, and then you have to invite the right people. And not be exclusive, but be inclusive in who you invite. And that is critical because you need to have that diversity around the theme to start solving complex problems.
I really love the way that you framed that that shift in thinking from, you know, who's in the room to make it happen, from this exclusive authority-driven space to an inclusive, diversity, impact-driven space. So how do you get those people into the same room? How do you identify who's impacted and then bring representation from those communities? What's that kind of first step to identify? Well, maybe the first step's your theme, but what's then the second step of identifying who those impacts are and how they come to show up?
I think it's a huge mindset shift, because we, as leaders, we always want to have the answer. and know the answer and be able to drive the answer. And with this, you have to say, okay, wait, we have to be open to thinking about this differently. So we need to be clear on our theme, because you can't invite people if you're not clear on what you're going to talk about. But then we have to really open our minds to who does that involve? Do you know how many organizations have conversations about products and never include the people who are going to use the product?
Don't most organizations usually have some sort of testing phase, right, where they go through customer testing, bring all the focus groups in? So how is this different than a focus group?
Because in those cases, you've already developed or designed or built something. And then you're asking them to come give their opinion about how that works for them. This is the opposite.
I see.
Where you're inviting people to the conversation before you solve the problem, so that they are part of the solution. So the example I always give to people when I'm talking about bringing people into the conversation earlier is the remote control, and how most of us don't use the buttons on the remote control because they have no value to us. Well, how different would that conversation have been if we had involved the people who are sitting in front of the television in the conversation about what to put on the remote control and even where to put it on the remote control, instead of engineers who are like, well, my blue button's important and my green button's important and my yellow button's important because we're engineers and we've built the TV. So an open space allows you to change who you bring to the conversation by being more inclusive, inviting more people. So if you're solving a problem, for example, around health, well, you need to have people not just from the hospitals, not just the doctors, not just the clinicians and the technicians, but you need to have patients. And you need to have patients in the demographic that you're trying to serve. So by doing that, you bring diversity to the conversation. And when you bring diversity to the conversation, what happens? Suddenly, the questions and the answers change. So
I love the way that that allows us to, connect more deeply, not just to the things we make and our peers, but also the people that we make them for. There's a lot of movement to shift left in the agile space. So I love this additional movement in just the ideation process, the creation process. So open space technology, in your view, because you said, there's 10 different viewpoints. So can you give me what is open space technology in 2 sentences?
2 seconds or 2 sentences?
2 sentences.
I was going to say, because I'm good, but 2 seconds, I don't know.
2 seconds.
In 2 seconds, it is a method of solving complex problems in an innovative, inclusive way.
Awesome.
That was 1 sentence. How was that?
This is really good. You have 1 more sentence. Just kidding. That's great.
Okay, I'd like to hold my sentence for later, please.
Oh, okay. Yes. We'll add it to your phone a friend for the next question.
Yeah.
Okay. So what should we be expecting next? As we're, exploring open space technology, it sounds still pretty vague and very exciting. Inclusivity is obviously a passion of mine, so I'm really excited to find out more. What's the plan from here? How do you then go from, okay, this is a really neat idea, to here's how to gather, build your theme, build the people that are going to then contribute to that theme, and then actually execute?
Right. So you need your compelling theme, your compelling argument for why should I even show up? The old, what's in it for me? If I receive that information, I need to know from your invitation, what's in it for me? Why should I show up, give my time, and participate in this conversation? So once you've done that, then you have to even let go of more of your expectations, which people are like, wait, we've opened our minds and we're, yes. Because open space works on several principles around the people who show up are the right people. So you could invite 200 people and maybe only 30 show up. Well, those people received your invitation with your compelling argument for why they should be there, and they made a decision about whether or not it was worth their time to participate in the conversation. So you have to know that the people are there are the right people. What happens is the right thing, because we can't script it. That's the whole point of this, right? We're coming together to innovate and solve problems. So whatever happens was what was meant to happen, right? When it's over, it's over. You know, the conversation might end in an hour, even though we planned a whole day, or the conversation might go through the day. And at the end of the day, people are like, oh, we're going to skip the dinner and we're going to keep talking. You know, so it's going to flow the way it's going to flow, because it's based on the concept that people are there because the theme resonates for them. They want to have the conversation, and they are going to help guide that conversation in the direction that it's supposed to go. So we get people in the space, and what do? Great. We're all impassioned and empowered to have this conversation. Well, then we have to be brave enough to stand up and say, I want to discuss X, or I feel that Y is important. And you can see the board behind me, which is not an open space board, but it could look very similar, where people are going to write down what they're going to stand up and say, what they want, they're passionate about, what they want to talk about. And then they're going to put it on a wall similar to the one behind me. And you're going to build your agenda based on what people feel passionately about regards that theme. Now, obviously, there needs to be a bit of management, because we don't want to go, you know, completely off topic where we've created a whole new theme. Mm-hmm. We want to stick within the theme that we created for this event. Maybe we need to have another event if another theme emerges, but we want to stay focused. So all of the ideas go on the wall, and you use that to build the agenda. And there are a myriad of ways that you can do that. And it really depends on the size of the group and the type of people and how experienced they are with this concept. But the idea is that you're then building your agenda based on what people want to talk about. And that is how you really get purpose driven. Because if I'm an engineer and I feel that we need to have blue, red, and green buttons on the remote control, and nobody in that room of the right people that we've invited bring up the buttons at all, that may be a good sign that's not important. Or it's not as important as something else.
So really, to rephrase or to kind of pull that together, what you're saying is pulling open space technology and using this is really creating a space for the right people to show up, and whoever shows up are the right people. The right thing will happen, and whatever happens is the right thing, because they've all shown up to be part of that theme. Mm-hmm. And then you really allow that space to create the conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think this is really valuable because I've been in this startup space for a few years, and there isn't a single startup that doesn't pivot significantly from what they thought they were going to build to what they were building. And when does that pivot happen? The first time they hit customers, the first time they actually put that in front of customers, and customers say, that's really neat. Can it do this? Mm-hmm. And then they go, it will. And then they build this new thing, right? And so pulling this together, I can see we could save a ton of money and energy from just building the wrong things.
Right. Or even building the wrong things at the wrong time. You know, maybe we do need whatever was built, but maybe we need something else more. You know, and by having these conversations, we're doing all those things we do in the Agile space. What's important? What are the priorities? Taking feedback, all of those things that we already do, except we're power packing them in the front. We're having the conversation before we even get to building a backlog and building a product. We're having a conversation early on about what problems are we trying to solve and why are they important to us to solve them.
I love that you said packing it towards the front, because most of the time, right, we get our feedback from customers once we've delivered something to them, right? And then here's a survey that's very well crafted in a way to get very specific feedback about what I want to know from you. And so now our entire interaction is pretty scripted. We give the, hey, leave us a comment, but most of the data comes from that very scripted environment, where this gives that more holistic, organic conversation. Thank you. That's a really neat feature you could have provided for me, but it would have been better if it did this. And so instead, it will be better if we do this. What about this? I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the fact that I don't have internet connection all of the time. How do I use this if I don't have internet connection all of the time? Great. Thank you.
So
I have no more questions. I have a pretty good understanding now of what open space technology is.
I think the biggest thing that anyone can do to understand it is to be able to participate in one, because it's very eye-opening to see that is truly an open space. There are all kinds of watered down flavors where people wedge things into conferences and whatnot, but to experience an open space where people are truly there voluntarily and free to express their ideas and their opinions in a way that makes sense to them opens up a whole new world, even in the Agile space where we think we're already being Agile. This opens up a whole new space for different types of conversations. Now, open space isn't for everybody and for everything. It's not a one size fits all cure all solution. It works best with overly complex problems that we're trying to look for solutions for, when there's a sense of urgency and timeliness that's needed, when there is a certain element of risk that we want to avoid. So the more complex the problem, the better the results may be with an open space. If you have something really simple that you're trying to solve, like which holiday should we have in 2022, that's probably not a good use of an open space. But with a complex problem, like what you and I were talking about with trying to create the right products or the right solutions for the right reasons, and open space absolutely opens doors that would probably not be opened if we're sitting in our own little contained groups solutioning.
So how do you then get involved in one? Is the best idea to just throw one and make it happen, or are they happening all over and we can go and find a space that we can go and join and experience?
They are happening with more regularity. I would caution everyone to really look at how and where and when they're happening to make sure that they're going to get that true experience. But if your organization or your community group has a complex problem that you're trying to solve, there are facilitators like us at Agility for All, for example, that can help you get one off the ground. I don't recommend somebody just read the book and decide to go try to do it on their own, because there's a mindset behind it. It's not just a step-by-step process you follow and magically this is going to happen. There's a lot of mindset work that goes with it. But try it, see how it goes. Oh, wait, what's that thing we do? Feedback and refine and keep doing things over again until they get better, because the more often that you do them, the more of a feedback culture you're creating where people feel like they can innovate and be part of a solution. So
even if you don't do it right the first time, you're still creating the practice of creating that space so you can do it better the next time.
Right. I mean, I guarantee you I didn't do it right the first time. And I guarantee you that every time I do one now, I always think of things that could be done differently in ways that we could have, couched the problem in a better way or invited different people. So it's no different than any other Agile way of working. It's just, you keep doing that continuous improvement every time you do it. But just reading about it or just listening to about it on a YouTube video, that gets you started, but you do really need to experience one. So if anybody out there is looking for ways to innovate differently in 2022, we would be happy to help them do that. And our entire series is going to be about different ways of working and different ways of approaching problems.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited for those opportunities in that space. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for listening to episode 1 of Series 7, where we talked about what open space is. Stay tuned next week when we dig into how it could help your organization. And as always, subscribe to the Agility for All YouTube channel to receive notifications of new episodes, and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn at agility_for_all.